Hi, in a previous video where I discussed why politics is dirty, we established that one reason for this is because the politicians are fighting for influence over none other than you, the person watching this video. And one of the things that they want to influence you about is voting and who you will vote for. And I like to compare this to a puppet show. We are all puppets with a master in a show, without knowing that we have a master or that we are in a show. However way you're influenced when it comes to politics, I want you to know that it was calculated. Welcome back to another episode of this special edition series dubbed The Real Mheshimiwa. And in this video, I will be telling you why you will not vote in this election. My name is Susan Wanjiku. I'm the founder of wanjikuseyeke, and here I discuss the relationship between economic development and governance so that you can understand, engage, and influence the matters that affect you and I. Welcome to wanjikuseyeke. Now, elections are coming soon, but unfortunately, I can't count the number of times where I've had people saying that they won't vote in this election. And data proves this. In October 2021 to November 2021, the IEBC was registering voters, and they had a target of getting 6 million new registered voters. But by the time they were done with the exercise, only about 1.5 million people had registered as new voters. Then they tried again by opening a second round of registration for 21 days from January 2022 to February 2022 to get the remaining 4.5 million people to register as new voters. However, they only managed to get about 1 million people to register as new voters. And they were mainly targeting the youth of Kenya, meaning the people who have already turned 18 since the last election in 2017. And that is estimated to be about 5 to 6 million people. Now in this election, we have about 22.1 million registered voters. And out of that, imagine only 8 million people are aged between 18 to 35 years. And just a disclaimer, these numbers are still raw because the IEBC is being faulted for not cleaning the data on voters. And cleaning the data is important to prove that the elections are credible and not rigged. Like say for example, when the results are tallied, the IEBC and other observers will want to know that the people who actually voted are not more than the number of registered voters. Then another thing is, when you clean up the data, you remove the people who have passed away since the last election. Then you also want to make sure that the people haven't double registered, like with the same ID, and also confirm who is registered to vote where. So you'll see that normally these are the issues that come up when people say that the election was rigged. I'll be back to this voter registration issue. So why didn't many young people register to vote? And generally, why have many people decided not to vote in this election, regardless of their age? And as a person watching this, why won't you vote if you don't intend to vote? I want to know if you're thinking in any of these lines. I don't think my vote can make a difference because it's just one vote. I don't know much about these politicians, and in fact, getting information about them is going to take too much of my time, yet my vote doesn't even matter anyway. And because getting information will take too much of my time, plus my vote doesn't count, I would rather do something else with my time. And on top of that, I don't even trust these politicians because all of them can't be trusted. My vote doesn't matter because the election is already determined and they already know the winner. Then number 6, I don't even know understand how politics affects my life, plus all of it is just depressing and dirty. So which category do you fall under? Now let me enlighten you on something. Did you know that voting is an economic choice? If you're thinking that I don't have all the time or money in the world, yet to get this information about politics, it will cost me a lot of my time, yet I could be busy with my side hustle in this tough economy, or even spending time with friends. Because anyway, one vote doesn't really matter. So let me even watch useless content on YouTube instead of content like this, because I don't even understand these things. Plus, I don't even know where to find this information. So such a decision is called a rational decision. And rational here meaning your thoughts have followed a sequence that makes sense in your head in order to justify your lack of knowledge or ignorance in matters, politics, and in voting. And in economics, this is called rational ignorance. And by the way, this isn't something that was just discovered recently or just a Kenyan thing. This behavior of voters was observed many years ago in the 1700s, and it's also called the paradox of voting. So in short, you deliberately choose to stay ignorant because in your head, you have made your ignorance make sense to you by validating it with those reasons on why you won't vote. But did you know that politicians all over the world take advantage of this thought process and use those same reasons against you to craft their campaign strategy and to manipulate you into taking action in three main directions: either to vote for a particular candidate, not to vote for a particular candidate, or not to vote altogether. And I will give you an example of each. And the first example takes us to Trinidad and Tobago elections in around 2009-2010. And just to give you a background, two major races dominate Trinidad and Tobago: Indian Trinidadians and Black Trinidadians. And because of that, their politics falls along this divide: political parties by the Indians and political parties by the Blacks. Now, in 2010, the United National Congress, a political party by the Indians, hired the services of the infamous Cambridge Analytica, which is a political marketing company and propaganda machine. So many, mostly dishonest politicians, especially in the developing countries, have hired Cambridge Analytica to design their campaign strategy at some point. Now, when the Indian side hired Cambridge Analytica designed and executed for them a campaign strategy to achieve one thing, and that was to discourage young first-time voters from voting. But the thing is, they didn't reveal to the people who was actually behind this campaign, so people just thought that it was an activist. Now, let me explain how they arrived at this strategy. Now, when Cambridge Analytica did their research, they observed that during that period, very many Black and Indian Trinidads were eligible to vote for the first time in that election. And so these young guys had a very huge impact on the outcome of the elections because they were also very unhappy with the leaders in their country, just like Kenya today. So what Cambridge Analytica did was to do a campaign called the Do So campaign, whose main agenda was to influence the young people not to vote as a symbol of resistance against politics and voting. So if you want to be cool, don't vote. And the result of that election was because the many young people did not vote, the Indian side won that election by a margin of 6% against the Black side. And just to give you a little more detail, now when Cambridge Analytica did their research about these young people, they discovered two things that would work together to make the strategy work: the attitude towards politics and the culture of the Indians. So the first thing, the attitude of the young Black and Indian Trinidads was this, and this is in the words of Cambridge Analytica. They said, let's make the campaign non-political because kids don't care about politics. Let's make it reactive because kids are lazy. But here's the catch that made the Indians win. Now, the Indian culture is a collective one, so it mainly encourages conformity and loyalty to the group and discourages acting as an individual. So what did this mean for the young Indian Trinidadians? It's very simple. The families of the young Indians would force them to vote. So the young black Trinidadians didn't turn up to vote on the day of the elections, but the Indian ones were forced by their families, and so the Indian side won. But eventually, many years later, when it was discovered that the political party affiliated to the Indians was actually behind that campaign, they did the usual, open an investigation that is headed nowhere. But anyway, you obviously don't expect anyone to come out openly and admit that they manipulated people. So young people were tricked into not voting without knowing that all this was engineered, because if they knew that there was a political party behind that campaign, they would probably have turned up to vote. Because one of the things that the black Trinidadians would have probably asked themselves is, why is the Indian side telling us not to vote? And if they showed up to vote, who knows, maybe the black side would have won, or they'd have lost with a similar margin. So don't be fake woke. I told you information rules. Now let's bring it home. In the 2013 and 2017 elections, Jubilee or TNA hired these same guys, Cambridge Analytica, and a company called BTP Advisors to come up with their political strategy. Now, just to give you some context, in 2013, both Uhuru and Ruto had cases at the International Criminal Court, the ICC, for their alleged involvement in the 2007-2008 post-election violence. So even as of around 2012, both Uhuru and Ruto were not popular because of these cases. So the main objective of Cambridge Analytica and BTP Advisors was to come up with a narrative that would change the perception and attitude that people had towards Uhuru and Ruto. So the first agenda was to turn Kenyans against the ICC and paint the ICC as racist and neocolonialist. And this also included manipulating Kenyans to turn against anyone who was a supporter of the ICC, including activists, civil society organizations, and Raila. Then the second objective was to paint Uhuru as a person who was victimized because of his tribe and also because of being African, so that he can gain sympathy from the people, and also paint him as a relatable guy who is going to be the answer to all of Kenya's problems. So what did they do? They rebranded the entire party, wrote their manifestos and all of their speeches, strategized with the media in Kenya so that Uhuru could also dictate the terms of the election debate, and just stage manage the entire campaign. And that's in their own words. And you can get those details from their website. The link is on the description box. Another thing that they did was to spread a lot of hate, fake news, and sponsoring very frightening rumors with a lot of imagery to invoke fear in the person watching, just to show Kenyans what a Raila presidency would look like. And one of these videos was dubbed The Real Raila. And just have a look at this video and just think of how you feel. Be conscious of how you feel after watching this video. Now, that video got almost 1 million views on Facebook and YouTube combined. And if you haven't already come across content like this during this election period, scaremongering either a Raila presidency or a Ruto presidency, I want to let you know that such content is being shared widely, especially on Facebook and on WhatsApp.
Take this video. It paints a devastating future for Kenya if William Ruto wins the election. It's slickly produced, but is a direct ripoff, scene for scene, of a video President Kenyatta's campaign put out in 2017. The target was Raila Odinga, who was campaigning for office back then as well. The video was put together by Harris Media, a Texas-based marketing agency made infamous by its political work around the world. They and other companies like the notorious British consulting firm Cambridge Analytica worked on 2 of Kenyatta's presidential campaigns. Those companies might not be involved with the candidates in the 2022 elections, but the methods they employed are still in play.
Now, you might be wondering, how are they able to make this strategy work in 2013? And in 2017. So first thing, Kenya has a very high internet penetration rate that is above 80% with very fast internet. That means that information can spread like wildfire, regardless of whether it's true or false. Another thing is they did their research about Kenya and Kenyans and strategized the campaign to be centered around the usual issues centered around jobs, the economy, and the fear of the tribal clashes because of the post-election violence in the previous election. In addition to that, they got a lot of data from Facebook and Google about you as a voter to understand you as a person watching this, what is your stance on political issues and what are your preferred communication channels. And after that, they were able to run campaigns on social media, targeting especially the people who were still undecided and were still not convinced about an Uhuru presidency. And let me just show you how this data is and can be used as a weapon so that you understand how serious this is. Now, if I were to ask you to just tell me 20 things about yourself, most of you would struggle at like number 7, including me. But Cambridge Analytica admitted to having 5,000 data points on individuals, meaning because of your online activity, they can tell you 5,000 things about yourself. Now, I don't know if you understand what sort of power that someone has who knows 5,000 things about you. Anyway, the bottom line is Uhuru won. And one important disclaimer that you need to keep in mind is that you as a person watching this and you as a person getting that information have no idea that all this is engineered. So Cambridge Analytica and others never do their activities out in the open. So you never really know who is behind these messages and the campaign strategy. It all normally seems so natural. So even all this was discovered through a whistleblower and an expose. Then finally, back to the issue that I began with, which is the last minute registration of new voters, which ideally is supposed to be a continuous exercise. Now, if you look at the timelines that were set for registering new voters, they committed 30 days for the first round of registration. Initially, the IEBC was going to have only 1 round of registrations, and they even said that they were not going to extend, not even by a day. And the reason was that budget haitoshi. However, they were taken to court, and because of a court order, they were forced to do a second round of voter registration because, I mean, you're locking out people from voting. And the IBC followed the court orders and allocated 21 days for the second round of registrations. Now, for a target of registering 6 million new voters in 30 days, that's quite ambitious. However, it is no coincidence that they chose to do this registration last minute. Now, ideally, and according to our election laws, the voter registration is meant to be a continuous process from when the election ends. Like as soon as this election is concluded in August, voter registration for the 2017 elections is supposed to begin next year, because I mean every year that there are thousands of Kenyans turning 18. So at the same time as voter registration is going on, civic education is supposed to be happening all through. But by choosing to do all these things last minute, isn't that a deliberate effort to make sure that the young people don't vote? And also by choosing not to invest in civic education, doesn't that mean that people will not understand how politics, government, and their lives are interconnected? And if they don't understand, why would they have a reason to participate in the affairs of their government or even to vote? So watch what Uhuru had to say about civic education in 2016.
Uamuzi ni wa wananchi wetu. Hatutaki tuingiliwe na nchi zingine wakituambia wanatusomesha sijui civic education ati jinsi ya kupiga. Wakenya wanajua kupiga kura. Mkitaka kutusaidia, help the organizations, IEBC and other institutions. Help them. Sio hii magrupu ingine inazunguka huko na mambo ya ukora.
So he basically trashed civic education and used our sovereignty to manipulate you and get you to support his statement. So finally, a lot has been said about the young people, but one thing I've observed is they get that the country is messed up and it's been working for just a few people and the leaders who've been around for a very long time. And yeah, leaders who've been around for a long time just can't be trusted. And that's why it's easy for Ruto to come and pose as the solution and separate himself from the problems of this country and the leadership of this country. So by locking the young people out of elections by design, they've managed to do one very critical thing. Now, a majority of the people who will be voting are from the older generations, and these guys are prone to one major bias, and that is tribalism, and as a result, personality cults. It's almost ingrained in their blood. So the younger generation is less likely to be inclined to the politics based on tribe, but the thing here is the economic conditions of Kenya, like unemployment, can be used to exploit young people and incite and organize them into tribal violence for a few coins. And finally, on the issue of IEBC, IEBC commissioners being appointed just 11 months into the elections and funding them late is just providing grounds for these things to happen, like make it impossible for free and fair elections to be conducted. And because of poor planning and issues of procurement of election materials and the inexperience of the IEBC officials, and IEBC just basically operating in secrecy. The second thing is that the election will probably be contested or nullified because of these reasons I've mentioned. And you can already see the signs. There are so many problems that IEBC is having. So everything right now is by design, and anything that looks like a mistake probably isn't. Now, in conclusion, I want to end with a Bible verse that says, "Cursed is the man who puts his trust in another man." I have had so many theories of people speculating what could become of Kenya if Ruto became president or if Raila became president. I want to remind you that you are not dealing with innocent people. None of them is innocent. None of the people backing them are innocent. So you can't for a fact claim to know how they will behave once they get into power. And all you can hope for is that whoever gets into power will want to salvage their political career and that they'll want to be remembered as Kenya's saving grace. That is the only thing that will ensure that Kenya is steered in the right direction, because the private interest of the politician and the public interest of the Kenyans will have aligned. Finally, keep in mind that we are all puppets and we have no idea that we are in a show, and you're being pulled in 3 directions: not to vote at all, not to vote for a certain person, or to vote for someone. The tactic is what varies. I want to close by reminding you to vote wisely, and at the end of the day, you are the real Mheshimiwa. As you vote, think consciously and evaluate all the information that you are consuming. And I will end in the words of Francis Atwoli.
In whose hands are we safe? In whose hands are we safe? Jeff, in whose hands are we safe? Oh God.
In whose hands are we safe? If you intend to vote, take it seriously and remember that you're putting your life into someone's hands for the next 5 years. In Kenya, ni yetu sisi wote, and we all have a responsibility to our country. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. I will see you after the elections. Cheers.